Welcome to the F50 Woman Podcast, dedicated to sharing stories from a diverse community of women in order to provoke you into a passionate pursuit of life, build unshakable character, and achieve extraordinary things. Now, here is your host, Julia Jack.
She lived on 4 continents by the time she was 16. She was the first girl to fully board at a boys' boarding school. Back and forth between different countries, her challenges as a young woman would culminate in finding her mother dead on the bathroom floor. Yet through travel, trauma, and untapped feelings, she still rose to become a software engineer, finding comfort in its logic and predictability. Now, finishing up her stint as a full-time mom, she has found more than inner peace. She says her body has been transformed, the shape of her skull has changed, and her spine has straightened. Come and hear how it all happened and how it can work for you too. This woman is passionate about spreading hope to the world. This is Ann Hince's story, and it's almost unbelievable, but true. This is a story of overcoming from one incredible and straightforward F50 woman. Hey, F50 women. I am here today with Ann Hince, and she is showing us how we can change the world from the inside out, change our bodies physically from the inside out. And I'm excited to hear about that. I'm excited to talk about the law of attraction and a different point of view on that. And, how we can actually change the world with what you've learned. So thank you so much for being here, Ann.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So I just like to start out just getting to know who you were, how Ann started before she became this incredible woman you are now. So tell us about who you are as a younger woman, what you wanted to be, what you were like, your family, whatever you want to share so we can get to know you.
Okay. I had an interesting childhood in that we moved around the world. So by the time I was 16, I'd lived on 4 continents.
Wow.
And so when we were in Hong Kong, my brother and I were sent away to boarding school in England as a 9 and 11-year-old.
Wow.
And the first school that I went to was a boys' boarding school. I was the first girl boarder in this boys' boarding school.
No fair.
Yeah, well, actually, it was pretty horrific because they teased me mercilessly.
I can imagine.
So, yeah, it was not a good thing. And then after that, I was sent to an all-girls boarding school, so I got both of them.
Okay. And why did you go to a boys at first? They didn't have a girls for the age, or why did that happen? Do you know?
I think it was just because my brother was sent there. It might be that the school was ready to open up. They did have some girls that were there during the day, some day girls.
Okay.
But I was the only one who got to stay after that.
Gotcha.
So then I was off to a girls' boarding school, and, I'd go back and forth to the different countries on vacations. And, during that period, both of my parents became alcoholics. So it was kind of felt like it was hell at home. I'd spend all these weeks at school just counting down the days to go home. And then when I got home, I just didn't want to be there. So, it wasn't a good start, to be honest. And then when I was 19 and living at home, I was kind of in the middle of college. I was doing a work experience from college. I woke up one morning and walked into the bathroom and found my mother dead on the bathroom floor.
Oh, my dear Lord. No. Wow.
So, yeah. So that was a big trauma. My dad was away at the time in Saudi Arabia this time. And my brother wasn't in the house, so I had to deal with it kind of on my own in that moment. And I just suppressed everything. I didn't know what else to do. We never talked about feelings. We never talked about any of these things. So I just didn't know how to deal with it. No one suggested anything. So we just kind of went on with life. Yeah. I moved out to California when I was 21, when I graduated, as soon as I graduated, and I became a software engineer. I was the only girl in my college computer science class.
Wow. Okay.
And I did computer science because it was logical. It was so nice to have something when this happens, happens. Otherwise, this other thing happens, because I didn't have that at home. Nothing nothing was stable at home. So, so I became a software engineer.
And were you always geared to engineering and the logical things, or was it really just sort of a reaction to what was going on in life, or maybe a little bit of both?
It was a little bit of both. My dad was an engineer. I was adopted into the family, so I wouldn't naturally have been an engineer, but I knew it would make him happy. He was also narcissistic. He was always right. So I kind of shut myself down because I was actually a really good artist. If I had done what I really wanted to do, I would have gone to art school, but it didn't even occur to me at the time.
Right. Yeah. And if you're not exposed to it, or if somebody's not pushing you toward it, I know that oftentimes we miss that thing that we're just really passionate about and we're even good at. Yeah. You went through all that, and I'm going to skip all that juicy stuff in the middle. You're going to tell us about, how, that big transformation you had, but tell us about what you do now. What is your career? What are you into? Tell us about you.
Okay. Well, I've been a stay-at-home mom for a long time.
Okay.
My boys are pretty much grown now, but I have written a book about the story, about this juicy stuff in the middle that we're going to talk about.
Yes. Okay.
And I am sharing my story because at this point, I have x-rays that show how how the bones in my skull have relaxed more into alignment, more into symmetry. Okay. And I actually found out this last week that I have grown 1/2 inch as a 55-year-old.
Wow. Okay.
Which is pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, that is pretty cool because that's completely opposite of what happens at 54 or older. Yeah, we shrink,
right.
They say. Yeah.
Yes. So I am sharing this story. I would like to be traveling around the world, sharing this information because it's information that I had not heard. I didn't know this was possible. And so I want to let other people know what is possible.
Okay. So we might as well just roll right into it. So tell us what happened. What happened to you and what is this transformation? I'm on the edge of my seat.
Okay. Well, by the time my boys were young, I'd had boys and they were young. I had this kind of almost business altercation with 2 other mothers at school. And, I hadn't really done anything wrong, but they thought they were not happy with what I'd done. And I just took it so badly because I was so reactionary. I actually had PTSD from childhood, from being around my dad. Right. And I couldn't sleep for days. And my mind was just going over and over and over this event, trying to work it out. And I realized at that point that this is not normal.
Right.
Most people do not react this way over something so small. So that was really the opening. It's like, okay, why is this? What's different about me that's making me do this? Okay. So, that's where I kind of started searching more than I had been. And at one point, I actually went to a doctor's appointment. I don't know why. I don't remember why I went. But he recognized that I was more stressed than I should be. And he asked me on a level of 0 through 10 what my stress level was. And it was an 8. Okay. And then he asked me why. And I knew right then it was the tears from finding my mother 2 decades earlier was still just under the surface.
Yeah. I can feel that. Yeah.
So he used this technique with me. It's a strange technique. It's called EFT. Yeah. Being an engineer, I wanted to know that it wasn't just a fluke, and that this technique actually worked. Okay. So sometime in that time frame, like the next day or 2, we had this 17-year-old cat that we've been told needed a daily saline shot. Now, I hated injections. Okay. I absolutely hated injections. So the first time I gave him one, my hand was just shaking so much. I just wasn't going to be able to do it every day. I was going to have to find someone else to do it because it was not happening. So I thought, well, this is a great test case. So I tapped, as I said, it's also called tapping. I tapped about my fear of hurting my cat, my hand shaking, my fear of injections, and my memories around injections, because I had had a lot because I traveled around the world.
Right.
And the next day, the needle just slid right in and my hand did not shake at all. It was totally calm.
Okay. So back up. So you went to the doctor, he introduced you to this EFT technique and he performed it there. Is that what happened? And
right. It's just a technique that you do kind of on yourself. So he did it with me as I did it on myself. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So maybe you can explain what this EFT technique is.
Yes. Verbally, it's a little bit like acupressure. So what you're doing is you're talking through whatever it is. And it's really your truth. You're trying to find your truth. You're actually trying to find the negative neural pathways inside your body where you've stored emotion or tension. So you can talk through an event that happens, or you can even just tap on a word. So, I could just tap on the word mum, or for me, dad. Dad probably had more emotion stored in it. Okay. So you tap on the first points, the karate chop points on the side of your hands, and you do a setup phrase there. So I might say something like, even though my dad shouted at me, that's my truth in this moment, and it's okay that I think that. Yeah. And you do that on the side of the hand, and then you go through these other points, and you're tapping firmly enough to do something. You want to try to create an energetic interrupt in the body, but you don't want to be gentle and you don't want to hurt yourself. Right. So you're tapping on these points. The next one's the crown point on the top of the head, then the beginning of the eyebrows, then the edge of the eye, then under the eye, then under the nose, on the chin, on the collarbone, and under the armpits. Yeah. Those are the points. They're the same points each time. We just tap using those points, keep saying the phrase, and then the energy will just dissipate from the body. Okay. And how do you know what phrase to say? So the doctor you went to was a medical doctor, not a psychologist. It was a holistic doctor. Yes. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So the word you're trying to use is your truth, right? Okay. Or a story. So what I did with my mother is I just talked through what happened that morning. Okay. And when the emotions would arise and I'd keep tapping, this guilt, just keep tapping on that until you could feel the relief. And one of the great things about EFT is actually provides feedback. We know when we're releasing energy. Tears are obviously a release of energy. A lot of people yawn. Some people burp. Okay. Some people will do a deep sigh. Some people will get really sleepy. And obviously the voice changes, right? If you're starting out with the real emotion in your voice, as you let go of that stored energy, it will just become like you're reading from a book, right? The voice will just change. And then you know that you've released energy. Yeah. And one of the great things is it's permanent. I was looking for something that absolutely changed the way I was. Okay. And to me, this was a permanent shift, which was so good. And this is something that you can use with short-term stressors, I'll call them. Say you're nervous to go into a meeting, or you have to talk to your spouse about something, or you're driving in traffic. I don't know. Things that just give you stress in the moment. You can use that as well. Absolutely. Yes. And that's what I started doing first off. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Any resistance that we have in ourselves, any fears, like, if we're talking on the phone, we can actually tap while we're talking on the phone. Okay. Right. And I did that many times. Or before, if I didn't want to pick up the phone, if I was too scared to call, I would tap before I made the phone call. Then it made picking up the phone easier to do. Okay. Nice. So yeah, but I wanted more than that. Okay. So I actually started writing down. I wrote down every emotional memory that I could think of from childhood, and I tapped on one each night. Okay. That's a huge exercise. It was a big exercise, but I really wanted to change. I could see my mind becoming quiet as I did this, because it used to be really noisy. It used to be very noisy in there, and used to be very negative and very judgmental. And I did not like that. I wanted it to change. Okay. Yeah. And it was just that one incident with the other parents that sort of triggered it, and you realize something's not working right inside. Okay. Yeah. And I could see these other mothers that were so peaceful, right? They seemed so peaceful. I so wanted that peace. Right. Okay. So tell us how that manifested in your outer life or in your body, or tell us how you saw the change. I know you said when you do this, you can hear the change in your voice. Maybe you'll get sleepy, maybe you yawn, those kind of things, but tell us how that was actualized in your life. well, as I said, my mind became quiet. But one of the key points was when I noticed that the voice in my mind, the one that used to criticize me and judge other people, it was no longer there. And then I realized that that voice had been my dad's voice that I had programmed into me, the words in childhood, and I just replayed over and over again.
Yeah.
So once that was gone, I remember opening the kitchen door one day and just thinking, I feel like I'm living in a different reality because my mind is so quiet. It was so different.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think a lot of people have that chatter in their minds and they don't even realize it. And they're living that voice. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't realize it till it was gone. I had to move beyond it in order to look back, 2020 vision. Hindsight is 2020 vision. Yeah. It was really interesting to live through that. Yes.
Yeah. If you interacted with those other mothers now, do you feel like your reaction would be different, or what would that be like? What, if you can imagine it?
Yeah. Well, one of the fun parts was when I had another mother come up to me and said she wanted to be as peaceful as I am.
Wow.
I knew
at that point. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that was really fun. But, it took work, right? It took work. I had to do this work.
Okay. And tell us about the work. Was this years of work? Was it quick for you? It's good to have realistic expectations. You're not going to do this on Monday and then Tuesday you're peaceful and, flying on the clouds.
Right. It does grow. You start to notice one particular thing maybe that you were reacting to that you're no longer reacting to. Nice. Right. And then you'll see something else. I'm not reacting to that anymore in the same way that I used to. And it's really nice. But it took work. When I write down this list of my history and tap through one each night, I probably tap for an hour to an hour and a half every night. Wow. Wasn't watching TV, wasn't doing any of that. I had 2 young boys still. And so I did this work because I could I just wanted more. It feels really good to release old tension. It just does.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how did that,
I started doing this work in my late 30s and I'm now 55. So
nice.
That gives a time frame.
And so it's not like, I go for surgery on my knee and I'm good and my knee's all fixed and I'm done with the doctor. It's something that you should or may need to keep doing.
Right. Except that everything you work on is a permanent shift, right? But it's just a layer by layer process, right? So I never had to do any more work on giving the shots to my cat, right? I did have to do more work on my mother, fighting my mother, because it's a layer by layer process, right? So in the doctor's office, we work through those first few layers. And what it does is it opens up the subconscious mind. Okay. And then more aspects of the memories arise. They kind of open up and you become aware of more details that you couldn't remember before. Yeah. So it's an interesting process. Yeah.
That's what I was wondering. If it's like a onion, we always talk about onions when we talk about layers. Once you peel one off, then you find something that was deeper that you didn't even know was there.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's continued to this day, right? I really wasn't very aware. I didn't know how I felt, but I became aware of my emotions as I started doing more of this work. And then I became aware of the physical sensations underneath the emotions, right? So every emotion, we use the words, right? The word fear is the name of the emotion, but what we're really describing is a set of physical sensations that we're feeling in the moment we're feeling fear. So then I became aware of that deeper level at those physical sensations. Yeah. And then I could work at this deeper level. So at this point, I didn't use EFT as much. I actually started using a different technique because I'd been in a group at the time and the guy in the group said, you don't have to meditate. It's all about feeling your feelings. Well, I just started my tapping journey at this point, so I didn't really know what that meant. But he said it every week. So I thought by the time, months down the road, I thought, okay, now I know what my feelings are. Let me see if I can feel them.
Yeah.
So one day I was doing the dishes at the sink and I thought, okay, I'm going to try and do this. So I was thinking and a thought came to mind that I could feel had some emotion behind it. So I thought, okay, so I can feel those physical sensations. And it was probably fear because I lived in fear. So I could feel that probably, I think, in my solar plexus, my stomach area. And then, so, okay, how do I feel those? And I would try different ways, but I was so good at suppressing those feelings. Right. They kind of were squirrely. The physical sensations wanted to disappear, wanted to get out of my reach of my awareness. So eventually I realized, okay, I have to actually hold myself as a statue. I have to stop moving every muscle. I have to stop breathing. So I didn't take a deep breath. I just stopped breathing where I was in my breath when I could feel these sensations. Okay. And then I would just hold my awareness, my attention on those sensations until I needed to take a breath or until there was a shift. And there would be a physical shift. It would let go. It would release. Okay. So then I would bring that thought back to mind, see if the emotion was the same, if it had moved somewhere else. And I would do it over and over again until that thought no longer had emotions attached to it. It had kind of been, the emotions had dissipated. Okay. So this was a deeper level of release. And so I would do this over and over again. It took a long time to get the dishes done when I was doing this because it wasn't a quick process.
Yeah. Mom, you're in there for 4 hours doing the dishes. What's going on? Yeah.
But as I went through this process, I became more and more present in the moment. So if my boys ever needed attention, I was right there. Yeah, it wasn't like I was in some deep meditative state or anything. I was very present. So then in the evenings, I started doing this on the sofa instead of tapping. But at that point, I'd gone through most of my memories from childhood. So I actually started working on more collective traumas, like things like 9/11, right? We all had emotions that we stored in ourselves from that. Yes. So then I would bring that memory to mind, hold my awareness on that tension, let it go. Bring it back to mind, just do it over and over until 9/11 no longer has emotions that would come up in me.
I'm starting to understand how because you mentioned that this can change the world, and I'm really starting to understand how that can possibly be a thing. I'm fighting a little bit the concept of the mind, the fear in the body, and how that disconnection happens, because I think I fear a lot in my mind. My mind starts chattering, well, what about that? And who's over there? So I don't know, does that disconnect at some point through this process you're talking about? I guess you have to do it maybe to understand.
You do. And that's, yes. So you don't yet have the awareness of the physical sensations, right? No. It's more in the mind, right? But as you went through this process, you would become aware of actually that fear. It's somewhere, you're holding tension somewhere in your body. Okay. And that you would awaken to that. You would become aware of it.
Yeah. So do you feel like physical ailments, some people's knees hurt, some have neck pain, hands, do you feel like some of that happens because of these emotions that you're holding?
I now know that it's just all one and the same. Okay. So when we're thinking about thoughts or memories that have emotions, they're actually stored somewhere in the body. Okay. I have no doubt. So let me continue a little bit with my story.
Please, yes. Yes.
So at some point when I was doing this feeling work and letting the emotions flow out of me, I realized that I could keep my awareness inside my body after the emotions or the tension had released. Okay. So the way I kind of describe it, because it's a little hard to understand, is if you have a toothache or a stomach ache, you can pinpoint where that is. You know where that is. Yeah. But once the toothache or the stomach ache is gone, you can no longer pinpoint it because it's gone. Yeah. But I could keep my awareness on the inside still. Okay. I could still tell where it was. So this to me was like a deeper level of awareness. And I started using this instead. So I would, instead of bringing the memory to mind, I would actually be able to just put my awareness inside and find tension, find physical tension. Right. And then I would do the same thing. I would hold my awareness on it for long enough and it would dissipate. And I'd do it again and do it again until the tension had dissipated. Okay. So this is a deeper level of the onion, right? I'm now inside. I've brought the resistance was outside of me because I didn't know how I felt. And I brought it closer to me as I became aware of emotions and closer as I became aware of the physical sensations. And now I'm actually inside the body. Yeah. And at some point, it took a while. I had to work through some tension inside my body before I could put my awareness in my head and my face. And once I was up here, just kept doing the same thing. But at some point, I'd released enough tension that something released. And because I'm now in my head, I'm close to my ears, I could actually hear it release and feel it release. And it sounded like old fabric ripping. And of course, the first time I was a little concerned. It's like, okay, am I hurting myself?
Yes.
Am I damaging myself?
Yes. Brain cells are getting lost. Yeah. Yeah.
But I realized it was another step on the journey. I feel like I've been shown this journey each step along the way. So I just kept going. I knew I couldn't be hurting myself because I'm just releasing tension.
Right.
So I kept doing this and I would hear it more and more. At some point, it's really just a deeper and deeper relaxation. So then at some point I could actually feel the skull bones when they would relax. And, they'd have to relax quite a bit. Tension would have to release. It's been an ongoing journey for sure. Okay. But that's why it was so great to have these x-rays. They're just orthodontic x-rays that my orthodontist did 8 years ago. And then again this last year. Right. So to see those changes, my whole jaw was way off to the side. And it's much more in the center. And my eye sockets, which were out of alignment, are much more in alignment. And I have scoliosis. So my neck is straightening, which I believe is why I've grown half an inch, because it has straightened. Yeah. So that's where I am right now. I'm still working on tension. I'm just in every moment when I think about it, I am aware of the next layer of the onion. I know where the next layer of tension is that I need to work on. I put my awareness on it, releases. I just do it again and again. Yeah.
That's amazing. So what do you say to people who say, listen, you know what, Ann, this is a bunch of hocus pocus. That's just whatever. That's just crazy. I mean, she's off her rocker. I don't know. What do you say? Or has anybody ever said that to you, or do they just listen politely or people might be really looking for it. Yeah. They might be really looking for something to relieve themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. No one has really said that, but look at the x-rays. You can't dispute x-rays. I mean, to me, it blows me away. If I could see those x-rays from someone 8 years ago and then this last year, and that those changes were made just with focused awareness or focused attention, I would want to know how to do it. That's why I'm sharing my story, because I would want to know how to do this.
Right. Yes. So you want to share it, and thank you for sharing it. So do you think that we can lose weight using this time? You think this is completely selfish? Can we skip the diets and do this process?
Well, absolutely, it's going to help, right? Because there's thoughts and there's resistance, right? There's a resistance to where we are now, right? We maybe we don't like where we are, right? We could tap on I don't like, and it's our truth, right? The key is finding our truths, right?
Yes.
So people say don't hate, don't say you're fat. They say all things but if that's how we feel, right? If I feel fat, I would tap on I feel fat and I hate it, right? Something like that. My truth. Yeah. Once you let that go, there's freedom there. Because I remember tapping, don't do this at the beginning. Anyone who's listening, after several years, I tapped on I hate myself. And I tapped on that for probably, 2 or 3 hours, maybe over a series of days. Yeah. And once you let the emotion around that go, it has no power anymore. Wow. Right? They're just words. I hate myself. They're just words. Has no energy left inside of me.
I love
and
that.
And then that's freedom.
Yes, it is. It really is. Yeah, because we oftentimes feel like it's bad. So we ignore it, but our minds are still saying it, but we're pretending that it's not because we know it's bad, but it's affecting us. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the darkness inside. That's the wound inside that we're not looking at. Yeah. Right. Because I can now sense inside of myself, I can sense the tension, and I know there's tension or there's no tension. There's darkness or light. So it's kind of like with my dad, I couldn't see it till after. Right. I can sense once I've let go of the tension, I can sense that it's light there and it was dark before. Okay. So we're finding that darkness, and even those emotions, those thoughts that we don't want to think, the things we don't want to look at, they're stored inside of us. Yeah. Those are the wounds. That's the dis-ease inside of us. And if we actually acknowledge it, if we actually look at it and let the energy that it is go, then we're clearing out the body.
Yes. Yeah. Do you think it's hard for people to find their truth if they've been ignoring it for so long?
Oh, yes, it is. It was really hard. And still to this day, the things we get caught up in, the emotional things we get caught up in, we're not able to see beyond that emotion. Yeah. So we have to recognize where we are, right? And it might even be, I don't want to do this, right? I tap many times on, I really don't want to do this, right? Or I feel resistance to doing this. Whatever the truth is, whatever level you're finding your truth. And that's what we acknowledge. Because once we acknowledge that we don't want to do this, or that we've got resistance to doing this, it lets go of that resistance. And then we can look at it a little bit closer.
And resistance is the thing that keeps you in the battle.
Yes, it does. Yes.
So how do you think this helped your parenting? Did it change your parenting or the way your children interacted or felt about you? Talk about that a little bit.
It made life much more peaceful. Right. Because I think of it through the law of attraction. Right. I think of the law of attraction slightly differently. A lot of people use it in terms of manifesting. I'm just using it as a universal law. The law of attraction is working every second of every day. So what I think of is we are, the whole of us, everything about us, our hair, our size, our gender, everything about us is part of our signal. And that signal is emitting and we're attracting back based on that signal every second of every day. So, I can change what I'm attracting back, and I can change it externally by changing my hair or my clothes. But to me, the biggest part of that signal is that tension that we hold inside of us. Because when I was able to put my awareness inside my head, I could not believe the forces in there pulling me out of alignment. Just incredible. I'm glad I didn't know about them ahead of time. But just huge forces. So if we have those forces inside of us, that is part of our signal. So we're attracting back based on that. So if I change my signal to be more in alignment, to be more at peace, then I'm attracting back more peace and more alignment. So it doesn't matter who that's from, right? It's from everything around me, right? It's from my husband, it's from my kids, it's from people outside of me. So I use that a lot in my journey. I would ask myself during the day, it's like, how do I feel right now? And do I want to feel this way again in the future? And if I don't.
Great question. Yes.
A lot of the times I didn't. So then I would do some work. Even just taking a deep breath, right, changes the signal, it relaxes you. So I would do that, or I would tap, or I would feel my feelings. I would do something to change my signal in the moments, because that is changing my future.
I think we really do underestimate the power of our existence and the power of our ability to create our circumstances. We always pointing at somebody else and something else, when if we all become aware of our own stuff and our own emotions, just how the world can just be transformed.
Absolutely.
I hope you reach the world and everybody listens.
And that's a key point that I'm trying to share with people these days. We can always bring it back to ourselves, right? Anything that's happening in the news, in politics, anything that's happening, it's how we feel about it that we have control of. So if we let go of our emotions, and we're all so divided these days, right? If we all have emotions about the other side, right? If we let go of those emotions, I believe we can come together in peace.
And letting go of your emotions doesn't mean letting go of your logic or your ideas or your thoughts, right?
Right. It just means letting go of the stuck energy. Emotions are just stuck energy inside of us. And it's energy that wants to be released. So these techniques allow it to release out of the body.
And then there's no more resistance within you, and there's no more resistance outside of you with others.
Absolutely. Yes.
It so makes complete and utter sense. So if you were to meet your younger self now, what is the one piece of advice you would give her?
Okay, I'd love to share two if that's okay.
Yes, please. Yeah.
I would want her to know that emotions are just stuck energy, just what we said, that emotions are stuck energy, and find a way to let it release because it's just wants to release.
Okay.
But I would also tell her, and this is a little weird, I would tell her not to wear tight clothing.
Okay.
Because I know now that this tension, we didn't talk about it, but I believe it's the connective tissue, it's the fascia. That's where all this tension is held. And when we wear tight clothing, we compress that fascia. And I know now from feeling that tension on the inside, how much that affects us. And I wore a lot of tight belts and tight pants and all sorts of things as a child. You know, even the bra strap where the bra goes across underneath.
Oh, yeah.
Around our rib cage.
Yeah.
And around on our shoulders. That is compressing the connective tissue, which I believe is where our soul resides. And I think it's ideal not to do that.
Interesting. So you said fascia. What is that?
It's the connective tissue. It actually has. It has a electrical component. And as I said, that's what I think I'm looking through when I'm looking through the body. Okay. And I believe that is where the soul is. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I have to remember you're an engineer. So you got the details. I love engineers for the details. Yes. The next part of your journey is just really sharing this with the world. Do you have any plans? Tell us about how you want to get this to everyone.
I am looking for public speaking.
Okay.
Places to speak. I would love to. Yeah, I would love to have 2 to 3 hour talks around the world. I really want to share, and I want to answer people's questions because I think I have an understanding. I know I have an understanding that I didn't have 10 years ago.
Yes.
And I've not heard others explain it. So yeah, that's what I'd love to do.
Yeah. What would you say? What would you advise our audience to do first in this to get to this place?
The first step is just noticing when you are becoming emotional.
Okay.
Yeah. And to begin with, I would only notice maybe once a day, twice a day. Yeah. But as you build on that, your awareness grows and you become aware. You become aware faster in the process, right? Before you get caught in the emotions, you become aware that something is triggering you.
Okay. And this works for men too, because men are emotional. I mean, they're different emotional, but they are. But, talk to the men. What about them?
Absolutely. Yes. You probably suppressed your emotions more than women have.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And you can unblock those emotions. I do believe that all those tears that we suppressed as children are still inside of us, and they will come out if we do this work. I cried a lot in those first few years. Yeah.
I believe so too. Even if you've had a good, what you would call a good childhood, I'm sure there's, we as parents repetitively tell our children things that hurt them or steer them away from what they really want to do. There's a lot of things that we do as parents that we as adults can undo when we're aware of how it affected us. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We program our children just like we were programmed. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Especially
wouldn't it be great if we did this work before we had children?
Yes. And that's what I was going to say, especially if we're not aware of this, that we're doing it. We're just repeating the pattern that we've sort of been built to repeat. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. This could probably help in so many situations. I'm thinking abuse, neglect, all sorts of things. If people can become aware of what they were fed, probably change themselves and then change their families.
Yeah. So and this is free. Anyone can learn to do this. You can learn how to do this in like 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
So people can do it themselves. We can't always afford therapy, or we don't always want to talk to someone else about our deep inner wounds. Right. So this is something that you can do yourself.
Yeah. So you would suggest you do it on your own. You can't mess it up.
I did it on my own. I wanted to do it on my own, but I know there are some people who have darker traumas than I did. And some people do want to talk. They want to have someone else with them to walk through it, because until you've seen that freedom is on the other side, you sometimes think those feelings are going to annihilate you, and it's scary. So for some people, yes, you might want to find there are EFT practitioners that will do this with people. Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah. So if you have large trauma, you may need that support to get you through it, so you don't sort of get more twisted up or afraid. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is one book you would advise all women to read, and why?
I love the book Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
I've heard of that one before. Yes.
It really explains how we box ourselves in, how we program ourselves to keep ourselves within our comfort zone. Okay. And to me, this whole work is slowly extending the comfort zone. It's finding that resistance at the edge of the comfort zone, allowing the resistance to dissipate, and moving out one little bit further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm just wondering if, you probably answered this question already. This is something that I would obviously need a book or to go to your website or go to your YouTube channel to understand how this works. And I can actually start doing this right now, so I can get to whatever next stage I'm trying to get to. Say somebody has a job interview, or, a lot of people are afraid to get to the next level in their careers. They're afraid of changing the dynamics in their relationships. But we can just sit down right now with a little bit of information and start tapping and becoming aware.
Absolutely. Yes. And you just work on your current, I do have a chapter in my book about if we do want to change something, right? If we want to change our job, perhaps, then we have feelings, we have resistance around where we currently are. We have resistance around our current job.
Yes.
And we have resistance around the job we want, because otherwise we would have it already.
Yeah.
Right. So if we tap on the resistance around both of those, that allows the energy to flow.
Okay. And so talk about your book. I don't know if we talked about that at all. Tell us about that.
Okay. I wrote it once I got to the place where I could sense inside, because I realized I was kind of going to forget the details of the journey if I waited too long after that. So I'm really glad I wrote it when I did.
Yeah.
And I talk through the law of attraction, how I believe we get programmed in childhood, how that gets stored in the connective tissue. And then I talk about the steps that I went through, starting with EFT and feeling the feelings, and then insights. Yeah.
And what is the book called?
It's called A Pathway to Insight.
A Pathway to Insight. Okay. So we got to pick that one up as well. So let's just get to know you and how what you do on a daily basis, or at least the one thing that you can't miss doing every day. And I'm wondering if it's meditation, but maybe it's not. So what's the one thing you can't miss doing every day?
Yeah, it's not meditation, although, if someone looked at me while I was doing this release work, they might actually think I was meditating, because often I will have my eyes closed, but I don't have to. I can actually do it. I can do what I call my release work. I've kind of called it release work all along the way, because it's just releasing tension at a deeper and deeper level. So so I do it many times throughout the day. I do it when I wake up first thing in the morning, last thing at night, during the night if I wake up, multiple times during the day. I just feel where that next level of tension is. Wherever my awareness calls me, I will hold my awareness on it, feel it, let it go, feel it, let it go, feel it, let it go, over and over again, just releasing tension at a deeper and deeper level.
Okay. It's becoming a lot more automatic for you.
It is. It's a part of me. Yes. I don't think I could stop, even if I wanted to at this point.
Yeah. And I guess from what I understand, you wouldn't want to. That would be going backwards. Yes. Yeah. So tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you after this podcast is over, so they can learn the work, so they can be there when you do these talks. Tell us how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. I have a website, annhince.com.
Okay.
I have a YouTube channel where I explain some of these things in more detail, and I have an EFT demo, and I have a Feeling Your Feelings demo on there.
Nice.
And I have a public Facebook page that I love to interact on. I love sharing things on there. So that's a great place.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. I have one more question for you that I like to just throw at people now. This is my new thing. What is the one message you would leave the world? Say you're about to leave, you know that your life is over, you're deciding to exit. What's the one message you would like to leave for the world?
You have so much more power inside of you than you realize. And there is so much more to life once you start using that power.
Nice. Beautiful. I hope everyone's listening. Ann doesn't have to go anywhere. You've got the message right now. So thank you, Ann, so much for being here and for sharing your story and for doing this work, because boy, do we need it. I really, really, really hope that we can change the world for the better.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the F50 Woman Podcast. Join the F50 Woman movement and this diverse group of voices to help change the world one woman at a time. Why should you join at your age? Because we're not done yet.